Okay, this is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show. We're on 910 KINA Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. This is my first ever show, and I have to say that I am so excited to have the person here with me in the studio that I am billing as the most famous Salinan. This is someone who has sat with celebrities, dignitaries, politicians, royalty, and the financial elite. And I've already mentioned he's giving me a dirty look because that's not the man that he is. I'm here with Wes Jackson. Hey, Wes.
How do you do, sister? How are you this morning?
How are you this morning?
Well, I'm taking nourishment.
You're taking nourishment. Yeah, he's on his second glass of water here. So, but Wes, you know, I know he doesn't like that kind of an introduction because he's a pretty grassroots kind of guy. Grew up on a farm in Topeka, Kansas. Is that right, Wes?
Well, near Topeka.
Near Topeka,
Yeah.
right.
We weren't within the city limits.
Oh, but you still bill it as Topeka.
Yeah, Route
so.
6 Topeka.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me something about growing up as a boy on the farm. I'm a farm girl.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me some of your good memories, because
Well,
I've got plenty.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Kansas River Valley,
Uh-huh.
near Topeka. Went to what was then Seaman Rural High School,
Uh-huh.
and was active in the Future Farmers of America and so on. Our farm was probably the most diverse farm that I've ever known. In fact, I looked at the crops that were grown in the year I was born, 1936,
Mm-hmm.
and there was something like 27 different crops. And
On your family farm?
on that farm.
That is very unique.
Yeah, plus the livestock.
Mhm.
And data was taken on each one of those crops, how much water had been applied. Our family had the first irrigation well, I guess, in the Kansas River Valley. And so data was being taken on all sorts of things, including sales and so on. So here's the, it's still the Great Depression going on. And it's very dry, but it was quite diverse. We had, in addition to all those plant crops, we had turkeys, we had geese, we used draft horses during my early years. We had the milk cows, the chickens, and so on. And it was a fairly self-sufficient farm. It was right along Highway 24 and 40. We also had a market there, and it was the Pacific Highway, people going west, and so it was also right where the old Oregon Trail had been, and some of the Indian trails, and so I was quite interested in the history of the Native Americans, the history of settlement, and also the history of agriculture up and down that valley. Good
Right.
soils, prosperous people, and so on.
So you mentioned something about a lot of data being taken. Was your farm kind of taken as something unique that researchers were sort of already tapping into and looking at?
Well, yes, it was, that was done in cooperation with Kansas State.
Kansas State.
I don't know why they picked our farm, but those records are really pretty amazing. Right there is right through the Great Depression that I happen to have all this data. So it was extremely diverse. I sort of grew up on the end of a hoe handle.
Oh.
And so if you could ever do something pleasant like put up hay and be in a hot barn, it was somehow better than being out on that hoe handle with endless rows. We had at one time up to 15 acres of strawberries. People would come out and pick. We had watermelon, sweet potatoes, cantaloupes, 5 acres of peonies.
My goodness, how many kids grew up?
Well, I was the last of 6.
You were the
and,
youngest of 6.
And I was actually born on the 15th of June, 1936. And and so it was hot. And so I had a 22-year-old sister who was married. I had a 20-year-old sister. And so I was sort of worse than an only child in that there's 8 years difference between me and my next older brother.
So you were the lone hoer?
Well, no, there were plenty of people out there.
Did you have some hired help?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to with that kind of an operation.
My siblings were out there, but you were expected to work.
Oh,
And-
I know that, Wes. That's
Yeah.
where my work ethic came from. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the girl that used to bale the hay with
Yeah.
the hooks that,
Yeah.
I would always load the elevator so my
Yeah.
brother could run them into the barn and stack them, because to stack them took a lot more upper body strength than
Yeah.
I had.
Uh-huh,
Wore out plenty of jeans, you remember that.
yeah,
And of course, soon as as we kids grew up and got out of high school, my dad went to the round bales and
Uh-huh.
no more of that, cheap manual labor
Right.
that we were.
Right.
You can understand that.
right,
So, it's kind of interesting, you talked about, I'm gonna show you something that I just got, and you recognize that handwriting.
yeah,
That's, I just handed Wes something from his wife, and she has the best name ever, cause her name is also Joan.
yeah,
She's my most favorite Joan I've ever met.
yeah,
But it's for a little birthday celebration, and you mentioned your birthday, so
Yeah.
here's a little card for you, and it says, "Ah, hell, Wes, you're not old." I think they call it vintage these days.
right.
So, our RSVP to that, and this is
Oh,
from my husband and I,
Okay.
and,
All right,
Wes has been doing this for a long time. You founded the Land Institute in 1976. I'm gonna give you a little background on his, he's very much of an intellect. He had his BA in biology from Kansas Wesleyan, an MA in botany from the University of Kansas, and the PhD in genetics from North Carolina State. Now, how did all of that bring you to the Land Institute?
huh.
All that education and that?
Well, I had been teaching, they hired me to start the Environmental Studies Department at California State University in Sacramento. And it seemed to me that students were given more to minimal compliance than spontaneous elaboration. And I thought that what was needed was a combination of the head and the hands. I mean, I kept looking at the hand with the opposable thumb, which had a tremendous contribution into increase in the size of the brain during our evolution.
Right.
And so it seemed to me that there was something missing in those classrooms where we're constantly dealing with abstractions without any particularity to go along with it. And also, I was interested in a kind of a homesteading trip.
Oh,
In
yes.
other words, what are we going to do when the oil is gone? And so, actually, my family and I had come back 2 years before, and we did a sort of a homesteading trip. My then wife, Dana, was an excellent gardener and a beekeeper and so on, and we had the 3 kids. And so we had the garden, we had the milk cow, we had the the butcher hog, we had the chickens, and we were living on not very much money. Well, then I had to either go back or resign, and we elected to stay and start the Land Institute, in which we would then have interns, and that we were going to spend about half time in reading, thinking, discussing, the other half time hands-on.
Right.
The interns started out paying a rather small tuition. And then in 1977, I read a general accounting office study that looked to me like soil erosion was as bad in 1977 as it was in the 1930s when it was founded.
Amazing, with the
the
Dust
Soil
Bowl?
Conservation Service,
Right.
So, and so we had also taken a trip to the Kansa Prairie. And so in '77, the idea occurred to me that we could build an agriculture based on the way the prairie works. And that we wouldn't have to have soil erosion if we were to feature perennials grown in mixtures. So that's sort of what set me off, and I published that. The paper was published in '78. And so that's been sort of the defining mission of what we've been about since. And now and then we've strayed off on various things. We had a project in Matfield Green. We opposed the coal-fired plant.
Yes,
But
I
we
remember
keep
that.
coming back to sticking to our research agenda. And now we have 31 staff people. We've got a nice new research building. We've improved the greenhouse. We successful thanks to a lot of people in Salinan with our $3 million capital campaign. We have 31 staff and a $2 million budget. So we're now looking at the next phase to bring paradigm or this concept to the global arena.